It started like every other Saturday night for me. A bag of chips on the table, a half-empty energy drink beside my keyboard, and my headset snugly over my ears. I had been playing for hours, lost in an online match with my regular crew. It was almost midnight, but I wasn't tired. The street outside my apartment was quiet, as always. I lived in a small suburban area where nothing exciting ever happened. That's why I threw myself into gaming. It was my escape from the monotony. We were mid-match when I heard it. A knock at my door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was hard, almost impatient, like someone wanted in immediately. I froze, fingers hovering over the keyboard. My friends were still shouting in the headset, completely oblivious. "Hold on, guys," I said, muting my mic. I got up and walked to the door, my socks whispering against the hardwood floor. Looking through the peephole, I saw nothing. No one was there. The knock came again, louder this time. I felt a cold prickle crawl up my spine. There was no way someone could have knocked and moved away that quickly. It wasn't humanly possible. I called out, "Who's there?" No response. The hallway was dark. The single bulb outside my door flickered, casting jagged shadows along the walls. I waited a few seconds, then turned back toward my desk, thinking it must have been my imagination. I was halfway to my chair when the knock came a third time. This time it wasn't at my front door. It was at my bedroom window. I froze in place, my heart hammering against my ribs. My bedroom window was on the second floor. Slowly, I turned to face the window. The curtains were closed, but I could see the faint outline of a shadow, someone standing just beyond the thin fabric. My body refused to move for what felt like forever. When I finally managed to take a step forward, I felt as though I were wading through thick water. I reached the window and, with shaking hands, pulled the curtain aside. There was no one there. The shadow was gone. I leaned closer, pressing my forehead against the glass, trying to peer into the darkness outside. The yard below was empty, just the swaying branches of the old oak tree and the faint glow of the streetlight. Then as I stared, my breath fogging the glass, I saw it. 2 handprints. They were smeared into the condensation on the window, long and thin, as if someone, or something, had been pressing their palms against the glass moments before. I staggered back, my heart pounding in my ears. The knock came again. This time it was at my front door. I didn't go back to answer it. Instead, I locked my bedroom door, shoved my desk chair under the handle, and sat in the corner of the room with my phone clutched in my trembling hands. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, whoever, or whatever, had been outside was gone. They found no footprints, no signs of forced entry, just those smudged handprints on my window. That night I didn't sleep. Every sound, every creak of the old apartment felt like another knock, another shadow waiting just outside my reach. I still live in the same place, but I've stopped gaming late at night. It's been months since that happened, but sometimes when I'm in bed and the house is completely silent, I swear I hear it again. That slow, deliberate knock. It was supposed to be a chill Friday night. 4 of us, me, my best friend Jake, his younger brother Eric, and our buddy Marcus, decided to hop on and play a co-op survival game. You know the kind, creepy, atmospheric, and full of moments designed to make you scream and laugh at the same time. The lobby loaded up like normal, and we started scavenging supplies to build our base. Jake was cracking jokes, Marcus kept complaining about lag, and Eric, being the youngest, was taking the game way too seriously, yelling at us to focus. We were a few hours in when Marcus suddenly asked, "Hey, who invited the extra player?" "What are you talking about?" I asked, glancing at the player list in the corner of the screen. There it was, a 5th player. None of us had invited them. The username was just a series of random numbers and letters. XV02Q46. At first we thought it was a glitch, some random player joining an open lobby, but Jake was the host and he swore he'd set it to private. We debated kicking them out, but before we could decide, the stranger moved. Their character, a hooded figure with no visible face, started walking toward us in the game. "Creepy skin," Eric muttered, but I could hear the unease in his voice. The silent player didn't type anything in chat, or use a mic. They just stood there, watching us. Their character didn't have a name above their head like ours did, which made no sense. We tried talking to them, joking at first to lighten the mood. "Yo, Silent Bob, you good?" Marcus laughed. No response. Jake typed in the game chat. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" Nothing. Then their character crouched. Once, twice, like they were acknowledging us. "All right, this is weird," Jake said, his usual confidence cracking. "I'm kicking them." He paused the game to access the lobby settings, but before he could do anything, the silent player sprinted toward our group and started attacking us. "What the hell?" Eric shouted, as his character's health bar dropped to 0 in seconds. It wasn't just an attack, it was brutal. The hooded figure moved faster than any player should have been able to, hacking and slashing with a precision that didn't seem human. "Cheater," Marcus hissed, but his voice shook. Within moments, all of us were dead except for Jake. He started panicking, swearing as he tried to run. The hooded figure didn't chase him right away. Instead, they stood over our dead characters, their heads slowly tilting to the side, as if studying their work. Dude, just leave the game," I told Jake. "I'm trying," he yelled back, but his voice cut off. "Jake, you there?" Silence. Then the sound of heavy breathing crackled through the voice chat. It wasn't Jake, it was slow and raspy, like someone gasping for air through clenched teeth. "Turn it off, Jake," I said, my voice rising, but he wasn't responding anymore. His character was still moving in the game, aimlessly walking in circles, while the hooded figure stood a few feet away. "Jake, stop messing with us," Eric yelled. Finally, Jake's mic came back to life. His voice was low, trembling. "Guys, my computer isn't responding. I can't exit the game, I can't even turn it off." That's when the stranger moved again. They sprinted toward Jake's character, faster than before, but just as they reached him, my screen went black. All of us were booted back to the main menu. The silent player was gone. "What the hell just happened?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Jake finally spoke after a long pause. "Guys, my computer just turned itself off." We tried to laugh it off as some sort of bizarre hack or glitch. But later that night, things got worse. Around 2 a.m, I got a call from Jake, his voice shaky and panicked. "Dude, someone's in my house." "What?" I bolted upright in bed. Jake whispered, "I don't know how they got in, but I swear I heard someone upstairs." I'm hiding in my room now. My heart pounded as I tried to calm him down, telling him to call the police. But before he could respond, I heard him gasp. "Wait, my dog..." His voice cut off. I sat there helpless, listening to muffled noises, frantic barking, a loud crash, and something that sounded like a scuffle. Minutes felt like hours until Jake finally came back on the line, his breathing ragged. "It was him," Jake said, his voice breaking. "The hooded guy. He was in my house. He came at me with a knife." Jake's dog, a large German shepherd, had saved him. The dog lunged at the intruder, biting and snarling until the guy ran off. The police arrived later, and we thought it was just some random break-in, until we found out the truth. The hacker wasn't a stranger. He was a kid from Eric's school. The police said he'd been expelled a year ago for behavioural issues and had developed an obsession with hacking and messing with people online. Somehow he'd gotten into our private lobby, and then he'd gone after Jake. Jake's fine now, but none of us game late at night anymore. And Eric, he hasn't said a word about it since. Still, I can't help but wonder how long the guy had been planning it, how long he'd been watching us, and how many other people he might still be watching. It was one of those nights where the rain didn't just fall, it poured. Sheets of water hammered against the windows of my small house, the wind howling like a living thing. But I wasn't paying much attention to the weather. I was too engrossed in a solo gaming session, a horror game I'd been dying to try out. I'd turned off all the lights in the house to enhance the atmosphere, and the flickering glow of the monitor was the only thing keeping the room from complete darkness. My headphones were cranked up, every creak of the in-game environment sending shivers down my spine. I was deep in the game when the first rumble of thunder shook the house. A second later, my screen froze and the lights on my keyboard flickered. No, I muttered. Sure enough, the power blinked out, plunging the entire house into darkness. My heart sank as the hum of my PC died. I yanked off my headset and sat there, listening to the storm rage outside. Great, I muttered, feeling around for my phone. The battery was at 15%. I decided to wait it out, assuming the power would come back soon. But as the minutes dragged on, I noticed something odd. The house felt too quiet. When the power went out, there was usually some kind of noise. The fridge clicking off, the hum of appliances fading. This time there had been nothing. Just an instant, almost unnatural silence. I shook off the thought and grabbed a flashlight from the desk drawer. Its narrow beam cut through the dark, illuminating the walls of my gaming setup and the scattered mess of cables on the floor. As I stood up, a loud creak came from the hallway outside my room. I froze, flashlight in hand, listening. It was probably just the house settling, I told myself. The storm was causing all kinds of noises. Still, I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling crawling up my spine. I stepped out into the hallway, the beam of the flashlight jittering slightly as my hand trembled. The rain hammered against the roof, masking other sounds, but I swore I heard something faint, a low rustling noise coming from the living room. I walked slowly, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. When I reached the living room, I swept the flashlight across the space. Nothing looked out of place, just my couch, coffee table and TV. But then I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The front door was unlocked. I was sure I'd locked it earlier. I hesitated, staring at the door, my mind racing. The wind rattled the windows and I took a shaky step forward. As I reached for the lock, a loud thump came from the kitchen. I spun around, my flashlight cutting through the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling. No answer. The kitchen was just around the corner, and I could feel the cold draft creeping from that direction. I didn't want to go in there, but I couldn't ignore it either. I moved cautiously, the floor creaking beneath my weight. When I turned the corner, my flashlight beam landed on the source of the noise. The back door. It was wide open, swinging slightly in the wind. My heart pounded as I stepped closer. I shone the flashlight outside, scanning the backyard, but the rain was coming down too hard to see anything clearly. The light reflected off the slick, wet grass and the wooden fence beyond. I slammed the door shut and locked it, my breathing ragged. I had no idea if the wind had somehow blown it open or if someone had been inside my house. The storm outside seemed to intensify, and just as I was about to turn away, I caught sight of something. Footprints, faint, muddy outlines tracked across the kitchen floor, leading back toward the hallway. My blood turned to ice. I hadn't made those footprints. I turned off the flashlight instinctively, plunging the room into darkness. I stood there, holding my breath, listening. That's when I heard it. A low, steady breathing coming from just a few feet away. I didn't think. I bolted toward the front door, fumbling with the lock, my hands shaking. The breathing grew louder behind me, and I swear I felt the air shift as if something, or someone, was reaching for me. I threw open the door and ran into the storm, not stopping until I reached my neighbour's house. I pounded on their door, screaming for help. The police came quickly, but when they searched the house, they found nothing. No signs of forced entry, no muddy footprints. Nothing to suggest anyone had been there. But I know what I heard, and when I went back to my house later that night, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. A single, wet handprint on my bedroom door. It started as an ordinary night of gaming. I'd just gotten home from work, and after scarfing down a microwave dinner, I booted up my PC for some competitive online matches. It was my way of unwinding, logging into a shooter game, where the only stress was a teammate yelling at me for missing a shot. I settled into my chair, adjusted my headset, and joined a lobby with 3 random players. Their usernames popped up on the screen: Ghost Sniper, Red Trigger, and Neon Wolf. None of them sounded familiar, but that wasn't unusual. The moment the match began, they were shouting out commands like we'd been playing together for years. "Cover me on the left," one guy said. "Sniper in the tower," another yelled. We were doing well, clearing objectives and moving as a team, until I noticed something strange. A 4th voice joined in. "Nice shot," the voice said. It was low and scratchy, almost robotic, but calm, too calm for the chaos of the match. "Who said that?" I asked, my mic crackling with static. No one responded, so I brushed it off as someone using a voice filter, but a few minutes later, the same voice spoke again. "You should check your back door," it said. I froze, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. "What did you just say?" I asked, feeling a sudden chill crawl up my spine. Still, none of the other players acknowledged it. Their chatter continued as if nothing had happened. The game went on, but I couldn't shake the unease. I typed into the game's chat. "Did anyone hear that voice?" "What voice?" one of them responded. Another player laughed. "You good, bro?" I didn't reply. Something about the tone of that voice felt wrong, like it wasn't part of the game. As the match continued, the voice returned, cutting through the chaos like a knife. "Your lights are on," it said. My blood ran cold. I yanked off my headset and glanced around my room. The desk lamp was on, along with the overhead light. How could they know that? The sound of gunfire crackled from the headset, reminding me I was still in the match. I slipped it back on, my heart pounding. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The response came immediately, as if the voice had been waiting. "I'm closer than you think." I didn't know what to do. I muted my mic, but the voice didn't stop. It wasn't coming through my teammates' channels. It was cutting through the game itself like a separate feed. The match ended, and I logged off without saying a word. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone to call Jake, one of my friends who also gamed regularly. I needed to tell someone about what was happening. But before I could dial, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from an address I didn't recognise. No reply at unknown.com. The subject line read, "I told you to check your back door." I stared at it, my heart pounding so loudly I could barely hear the rain beginning to tap against the window. Against my better judgment, I opened the email. It was empty except for one attachment, a blurry photo. It took me a second to realise what I was looking at. It was a picture of my house, taken from the backyard. My chest tightened, and I sprang up, grabbing a baseball bat I kept under the bed. I ran to the back door, throwing on the porch light. The yard was empty, nothing but the rain-soaked grass and the dark shape of the fence beyond. I stood there for what felt like hours, bat gripped tightly in my sweaty hands, waiting for something to move, but nothing happened. Finally, I locked the door and went back to my room. My nerves shot. I couldn't sleep, so I sat at my desk, scrolling through forums to see if anyone else had experienced something like this. That's when my computer screen flickered and a notification popped up in the corner. "Incoming call. Unknown number." My stomach dropped. It wasn't my phone, it was the game chat software. Someone was calling me directly. I clicked to decline, but the call wouldn't stop. The screen flickered again, and a message appeared in the chat window. "Don't ignore me." I slammed the laptop shut, my heart racing. I didn't care about the rain. I grabbed my keys and left the house, driving to Jake's place. The next morning, I went to the police. They didn't seem to take me seriously at first, but when I showed them the email and the photo, they promised to investigate. A week later, they found him. It was a 17-year-old kid who lived in my neighbourhood. He'd been hacking into gaming servers and using them to spy on people through their webcams and headsets. He'd been in my lobby, watching me, listening to me, and trying to scare me for his own twisted amusement. The police said I was lucky. Apparently he'd been arrested before for stalking another gamer, and it hadn't ended well for her. I don't game online anymore. In fact, I haven't touched my computer since that night. Because even though the kid was caught, I can't shake the feeling that someone else could be watching. And next time, I might not be so lucky. Streaming late at night had become my routine. It wasn't about making money or growing a massive audience. I just enjoyed hanging out with a small group of regulars while I played horror games. It made the loneliness of living alone in a small apartment a little easier to deal with. That night everything started like normal. I set up my equipment, laptop, mic and webcam, and logged into my stream. The game was a slow burn psychological thriller. One of those titles where the quiet moments are scarier than the jump scares. My chat was already active, cracking jokes about how easily I got spooked. The setup in my room was pretty simple. My desk faced a wall, and behind me was a large window that overlooked the parking lot. It was a big window, but it was covered by heavy blackout curtains because the streetlights outside always annoyed me. I never thought much about it. About 20 minutes into the stream, things started to feel off. I was navigating a dimly lit corridor in the game when one of my regular viewers, Shadowhunter, typed, "Hey, what's moving in your window?" I frowned at the chat, confused. "What do you mean, moving? The window's covered." The messages started rolling in fast. "No, seriously, check it. Bro, there's someone there. Turn around." I paused the game and glanced back at the window. The curtains were drawn shut, just like always. Nothing seemed out of place. I even laughed it off, saying, "You guys are trying to mess with me, aren't you?" Chat played along, joking about how easily scared I was, and I went back to playing. But a few minutes later, another message popped up. "I'm serious, it moved again. Look at the reflection on your screen." This time I hesitated. My monitor was glossy, and if something or someone was behind me, I'd be able to see it faintly in the reflection. My pulse quickened as I leaned in, my eyes scanning the edges of the screen. There it was, a faint dark shape in the reflection, just barely visible behind the curtain. My heart started pounding. I forced a laugh and said to the chat, "Okay, I'm officially creeped out." I stood up, telling everyone I was going to check it out. Grabbing my phone as a makeshift flashlight, I walked to the window, each step heavier than the last. My chat was spamming messages, half joking, half panicked. "Don't open it. Dude, it's not worth it. Call someone." When I reached the curtain, I hesitated. The room felt colder than it had a minute ago. Slowly I pulled the fabric aside just enough to peek outside. Nothing. The parking lot was empty, the streetlights casting long shadows over the cars below. The only movement was the swaying of a tree branch in the wind. "See? Nothing there," I said, trying to sound casual. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I sat back down, pretending everything was fine, but I couldn't focus on the game anymore. My eyes kept darting to the monitor, searching for movement in the reflection. Then came the sound, a faint tap, tap, tap from the window. My stomach dropped. I froze, staring straight ahead, hoping it was just my imagination. But then it came again. This time I didn't look. I grabbed my phone and typed a message to my friend Mark, who lived in the building next door. "Dude, I think someone's outside my window. Can you come over?" He didn't reply immediately, so I sat there, paralysed, until my phone buzzed. Mark's response made my blood run cold. "I'm out of town, man. Call the cops." Before I could even think about dialing 911, the sound changed. The tapping turned into a soft, deliberate scraping, like nails dragging across the glass. I stood up so fast my chair toppled over. My chat exploded, full of messages like "get out" and "run." I crept toward the window again, my whole body shaking. This time I didn't pull the curtain aside. I pressed my ear to the wall, trying to hear anything over the pounding of my heart. The scraping stopped. Then I heard a low creak. It wasn't coming from the window. It was coming from the living room. I turned toward the door, every hair on my body standing on end. My apartment was small, just a one-bedroom unit, and I could see the living room from where I stood. That's when I saw him. A man dressed in dark clothing, standing by my front door. He was holding something, a crowbar. For a moment neither of us moved. My brain couldn't catch up with what I was seeing. Then, as he took a step toward me, my instincts kicked in. I bolted for the bedroom door, slamming it shut and locking it. My hands fumbled for my phone, and I dialed 911, trying to keep my voice steady as I explained what was happening. "I don't know how he got in," I whispered. "Please hurry." I could hear him moving through the apartment, his footsteps slow and deliberate. He tried the bedroom door, the handle rattling violently. I grabbed the only weapon I had, an old metal lamp, and braced myself, praying the police would arrive in time. Minutes felt like hours, but finally I heard sirens outside. The man must have heard them too, because the rattling stopped. By the time the police broke down my front door, he was gone. They found signs of forced entry on the balcony door. He must have climbed up from the parking lot, pried it open, and gotten inside while I was streaming. I moved out of that apartment the next day. I still stream occasionally, but now I keep my curtains open so I can always see what's outside. And that brings us to the end of tonight's video. Thank you so much for joining me as I shared these 5 chilling gaming night horror stories. Whether you're a casual gamer or someone who loves the thrill of a late night session, these tales remind us how quickly the ordinary can turn into the terrifying. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel for more stories that will keep you up at night. And if you've ever had your own eerie or unsettling experience while gaming, I'd love to hear about it. Drop your story in the comments below. Stay safe out there, and remember, sometimes the scariest things aren't inside the game, they're just outside your door. Until next time, keep the lights on.